Hello, and welcome to Global Data Themes Instant Insights. At Global Data, we define a theme as something that keeps a CEO awake at night, as businesses that invest in important themes will succeed, and those that don't will fail. Hello, and welcome to Instant Insights. I'm Emma Taylor, and today I'll be talking to Jerry Caron from Global Data following the recent annual technology virtual conference. Hi, Jerry. How are you?
Hi, Emma. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. You just got back from the States?
Well, I did actually. However, I live in London,
Yes.
and I've been here for 21 years now.
Yes.
But I actually did just come back from the States for a visit. So,
Well, welcome home.
thank you.
So, Jerry, the title of the conference was Super Connected Life in a 6G World. 6G, what happened to 5G? We just, skipping that whole thing?
It's a really good question, and we are being a bit ambitious talking about 6G at this point. So it's a bit silly, but much of the hype around the evolution to 5G, which, if you remember, it was heavily hyped and still is to a large degree. Things like massive bandwidth and super low latency for gaming applications, what we now call the metaverse, etc. All that led to an accelerated discussion around the ideas like autonomous vehicles, wide scale and democratized Industry 4.0 applications, IoT or Internet of Things at an almost sort of unimaginable scale, edge computing, and indeed, of course, the big buzzword of 2022, the metaverse. And of course, then there's all these use cases we haven't thought of yet, which was a big 5G thing. It's like, oh, you won't be able to imagine what we can do with all this bandwidth and low latency. Well, as we move through the years of really rolling out 5G, which is just happening now, actually, in a lot of areas, with what's called 5G standalone and 5G advanced coming quickly after that. The whole industry has realized, it's sort of sunk in, that much of that, all of those applications we've been talking about for 8 years or more, or at least the full manifestations of those applications, will actually come at some point in the future.
Right.
Which implies the next generation of mobile technology, and that's currently being referred to as 6G.
Okay, so, 6G. What is 6G? How is it different, and what will it enable?
So 6G will, of course, be more powerful, bigger, stronger, all those things you would expect.
Yeah.
But that's not the key. The
Right.
key that everyone's focused on is ubiquity. So right now, 4G that we've gotten used to, and now 5G as it's been rolled out, is real spotty. Even here in London, the various operators like Vodafone and O2, et cetera, have what they call 5G, but it's really not available everywhere. And even if it was, it would be really inconsistent in what sort of speed you got and everything like that. So the focus with 5G Advanced, which is coming out in the next couple years, and then ultimately 6G, is ubiquity. So it is available everywhere, but also consistency. So you can rely on the speed and that low latency. And honestly, that was promised with 5G, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, going back to what you were saying about ubiquity and consistency for these networks, you can imagine something like an autonomous car. That would just be so key. You don't want, your car cutting out in the middle of the motorway or something.
Well, that's right, and that's why so many of the projections around autonomous vehicles were way over ambitious.
Yeah.
It's something that even in this 6G world that we're talking about in our conferences here, even then it's still a little bit of skepticism about real autonomous vehicles being enabled even then, but perhaps it will. We'll see.
So going back to your conference, you spoke about the human body as a new interface. How will that play out?
Yeah, so we're already seeing it to some degree. If you think about smartwatches and you think about using your retinal scanning and all of that, it's already happening to some degree. But if you take the metaverse example and the sort of commercial opportunities around there and the fun opportunities around the metaverse, the end game is about enhancing our lives, not escaping from them completely. I mean, nobody really wants to walk around wearing goggles, right? So what will be that interface? And believe me, there's a lot of money, investment, and thought going into that. And once we see some consistency from the network standpoint that I was just talking about, it will the use cases and applications will thrive and will become more and more mainstream. So augmented reality will become a really big thing, and the devices to doing that are going to be far more prevalent. You can think about glasses, you can think about things that sense movement and touch and all that are going to become the interfaces, and so much so that these wearables, these augmented reality devices, et cetera, will become part of how we interact with the world and interact with information and data, just like we do today with our smartphones. Now, Anisha Bhatia, one of our top analysts on the conference call, made a statement which raised some eyebrows, and it was that smartphones will not be relevant in this 6G world. And will be obsolete within 10 years.
Wow.
Now, she's not the only one saying that. Apple itself has sort of alluded to that possibility. The idea is we won't need them. We'll have this wearable technology, these other ways of accessing information, accessing games, accessing commercial opportunities. That, to me, that's one of the most fascinating technological developments over the next 10 years that we all need to be watching.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, it sounds so far away, but if you told us all 15 years ago the amount of time the average person would spend looking at their smartphone a day and the capabilities that offers, you would have also been completely, skeptical about that as well.
And I think we're all getting a bit fed up with it, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right. So it leads us to the next thing, the other path, the other way of interfacing with everything we want to interact with. So
that seamless distinction.
Yeah.
And will this sort of super connectivity that we've been talking about, how will that sort of magnify ethical or regulatory issues?
Significantly, as you can imagine. I mean, let's take privacy, for example. Privacy today is, in many people's minds, already out of control, right? Yeah. And that's just in the merely connected world that we have today. In the super connected world, it's pretty obvious to see it'll become even more unmanageable. So we're going to have to move to something. It's a movement now in enterprise applications or enterprise technology. It's called zero trust networking. So you start with the assumption that you can trust nothing and then go from there.
Yeah.
And the trick is to do that in real time or near real time. So that's what they're working on now in enterprise connectivity or enterprise applications. Well, think about that coming to all applications, to our personal lives. So you have basically zero access, to our information, to ourselves, without explicit, transparent permission. None of this fine print, and all that, and that is the starting point. And from that point forward, then you go and do what you allow to happen, and so that will create a whole new regulatory environment and a whole new set of rules. And I do want to add that none of this, in my mind, is particularly alarming. The regulatory bit, the privacy bit, or or any of that, and because in fact, it's what we expect, both as individuals and as businesses and governments and organizations. We're looking forward to this. This super connected world, in a lot of ways, has become table stakes. It's what we imagine it should be the case, right? And now, we really do have a roadmap for the technology to enable to exist. So I guess we'll just have to see how long it takes.
For sure. And I mean, if it is some kind of inevitability almost, then, it's better not to sort of be alarmed and fight against it, but just work with it.
Yeah, and from a commercial perspective, it's important to be out in front of it.
Yes.
And that's what we've been talking about in our conferences. So.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Jerry, for those instant insights. Thanks for listening, and from us in Thematic Intelligence, see you next time.